it gets more fun. We had to kind of get that stuff out of the way just to even navigate the software. Now we're going to see how Studio Max is really different from this other software that we've been working with. Okay, so go ahead and make a box and make it like a rectangle. It should have one dimension, longer than the other. You might want to untoggle snaps too, just if that gets in your way. You don't need snaps for this. We're just going to play with one box here. Okay. Everybody have a box? Okay. So the really interesting thing about Studio Max is what's called the modifier stack. Okay. And you access that if you go into the second tab. So the first tab is create, the second tab is modify. Okay, so now we're going to modify our box. Okay, and you can add in, length segments and width segments and height segments. So you can essentially add more like polygons to the form. Okay, we saw this with the teapot. The more polygons you have, the more detail the system adds to that object. Okay, but we can do other things with that are really interesting and potentially useful. Okay, so the modifier list right now just says we have a box. Okay, so this is cool though. So we made the object, but we can always modify it like after the fact. So like if I want the width equal to height, I can go back at any time and I can just parametrically like change that if I want. Okay, it's not like connected to anything, there's no dependencies, but I'm just saying it's kind of interesting you can modify it like after the fact. So I've got this like form. Look at this, I've got kind of a grid on this side, but I've got kind of like an elongated set of polygons. That's kind of interesting too. So I'm going to go in, and it's hard to see on my screen, but if you go all the way to the edge of the modifier list, you can open up this drop down here. Go ahead and throw a bend modifier on there. Okay, so you go to the You're on the box, you go to the second tab for modify, add a bend modifier. Okay. Once you've got that, you can change the angle and you can actually begin to interactively wacky waving inflatable tube man, bend this thing. And actually that's the Z axis. I don't really care for that. Let's make it do some you can make it flex. You can do some bicep curls. So there's different axes for this thing. Yeah, like a Heatherwick. Yeah, exactly. The other thing you can do too, if you made a different kind of box. Actually, let's play with that. Why did I just do that? I can do it with. So let's say I took my box. Check this out. So I've got this thing. But okay, so it's kind of faceted. And it's not very long. It's maybe thicker than I want to. Check this out. I can go back in time. I can go back in the stack to like the parent object, and I can modify that. So if I go back and I add more like length segments, I can make that a smoother thing. I can make it a curve now. Then I go back to my bend, and I can bend it again, and it's a smoother curve. Or I can go back to my box thing, and I can make it a tall object. And then I can make it a skinny. So I can make it a tube now. Like before it was a thing, and now it's a tube. And then I can go into bend, and I can go to a different axis, and now I can bend it. Now it's wacky waving inflatable tube man. But see, then I don't have the facets I wanted that I need anymore. So I can go back, and I can reduce the facets in the length, and I can increase the facets in the height and give me a smoother transition. So modifier stack is really neat, right? We can go back and we can edit that, and we can edit that object, and again, the number of polygons is part of the level of detail of the transformations that are possible with some of these modifiers. Okay. So we have any questions about that? It's really flexible though, and it's kind of sculptural, Like I could certainly draw that curve and offset it and extrude it, but then if I wanted to modify that, it's kind of a pain, right? I need to make a decision already about what that bending form looks like before I even get this far if I'm modeling it in Rhino. But in Max, I can kind of ponder, what that angle exactly, how much of a bend that thing actually has. You can play with some of the other settings of it too. Whoa. You can even play with the direction a little bit. Pretty neat though, and I gotta tell you, like, I could model that in Rhino, but it would take me like 10 times as long to do it, right? Okay, and I can get this back into Rhino too, so don't feel like you're stuck here, okay? So that's kind of neat. So you can experiment with that. You can also put a limit on it, so I can actually do, I can move a little box here that actually only twists like part of the form. So the top of it stays kind of square, but the bottom deforms. So there's like a limit object here.
Can you deform all three at the same time, or they happen one at a time?
They happen one at a time. But that's a great idea, Yashka. So you know what I can do? I can add another bend modifier, and I can bend the bend. I think some of you guys have started to kind of play with that, right? So yeah, Yashka's got a great idea. Whoa, cool. And that is the beauty of the modifier stack, right? And then if I go back to the box, I can still go back and I can play with the amount of information in that system to get the kind of form that I want. Okay? Yes, you can add a bend model, you can bend a bend, and then if I modify this, it gets modified by that. I can pick one up and I can make that one happen before the other one does. Okay? But it's kind of like a time machine thing, right? So like if I go back in time and I kill my grandfather, I cease to exist, right? So if you go back and you mess up the box such that it can't be bent anymore, you can break your modifier stack. Okay, we'll talk about this a little bit later. All right. So okay, so bend, we saw the kind of bend modifiers. I'm going to show you a couple more that are worth knowing about. So here's my one bend. I can also add a twist modifier. Yeah.
Just the top bend is it's only moving the top.
Yeah, you don't have enough polygons in the box in order for it to give you information. So go back in time to the box and add a height to it, add height segments.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. That's the point one of the points I'm trying to make here. So twist. Again, I could twist the box first and then bend it. Wow, that's even better. Oh yeah. Okay. Your teachers are going to hate us. You can twist a bend. You can bend a twist a bend. You can go crazy with this stuff. But you have control over it. Okay. So check that out. Bless you. Check that out though. That's just a twist, and you can also do a lower limit or an upper limit on the twist. So you can only twist part of it, and then it becomes square. How awesome is that? How could you model that, right? That would be tough to find the edge curves to create that in Rhino. That took me 3 seconds. Okay. So play, later on, play with the stuff. I'll show you a couple more. So bend, twist. There's only a few that are really useful in that same kind of way. I got to think about this. Let's see here. Oh, taper. So taper is another one, and it essentially just creates a tapering form. But if I wanted to do a twist taper. I mean, some of these can be really interesting. Would be very hard to pull off. All right, so now my building actually starts small, gets tall. Very Calatrava, right? Or it could be potentially. You can experiment with forms that aren't boxes. I think I saw some of you guys playing with that, right? What if you twisted a cylinder or something, right? Or what if you experimented with that? So the modifier stack is just a really fast way to experiment with modifying those forms. I think there's another one that I'm missing here. Oh, skew is another one, the last one. There's 4 big ones. There's a skew modifier, and again, that's going to do what you think it's going to do, right? Which is that it displaces the geometry inside of this kind of skew box. Oof, that's dynamic. There's your logo for your architecture firm. So skew, taper, twist, bend are the 4 big ones. And it's just a box. And I see, and there's other modifiers, and I'll take you through some of them. I see Gil playing with one, so I'm gonna call him out with it. You can throw on a lattice modifier, lattice, and you gotta play with this a little bit. But a lattice is going to give you so remember all the stuff we did in Grasshopper to like get the diagrid and like get all that stuff, you know, to make a parametric like grid? Lattice. Now I have a parametric frame for any geometry that I created. Schematic design, you know, right? You can just quickly kind of whip out like a facade. You can also do there's a way to get it to do all the facets. I can't remember exactly. Yeah, if you uncheck ignore hidden edges, there you go, guys. Diagrid. Whatever the polygon form of your object. Oh, Gil, did you crash it? Yeah, you got to be careful with some of this stuff. You're playing with live ammo here. It can overwhelm the computer. If you're not getting good results from your lattice, you got to shrink the size of the radius of the struts and the joints. Amber, that looks cool. And so, you know, you don't have to start with a box. Like, you could go in your kind of Rhino style, right, and take a cross section of something and extrude it and then bend it or twist it. Okay. So there are some modifiers that you know, you have a lot of that change the form, and there are some that are just kind of states of the form. Like the lattice just changes the state. It's usually better just to put that one last. Let's see what happens if I put it somewhere else. I don't know. It might not do much, I guess, but because then I'm going to be twisting or tapering the lattice itself. Well, it doesn't really do much actually. But see if I go all the way back to my box. See, you can make a frame out of any kind of box that you made too. Very useful. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about what they're like seeing here with the modifier stack? So the stack is like, it's parametric, it's like a time machine, okay? It's state dependent, but it's very interactive for us, right? And I can go back in the stack and I can play with the proportions of what I've got, right? By changing the geometry. Look at that. So I've got like one side that's faceted and one side that's like not faceted. That's pretty neat too. Wow. Dangerous. Now it's a double helix. Very cool. Okay, so those are the 4 kind of primary ones, and then lattice for good measure. Okay. Now let's go back to I'm going to remove those from the stack. So if I click on the trash can, I can remove a modifier. I'm going to go back to my box. Okay. I'm going to make it a pretty standard kind of size box here. No, maybe 200. Okay. Okay, so I got a pretty standard like box. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to do something called box modeling, and it doesn't necessarily need to happen with boxes, but that's what it's called if you want to look it up online. It's a good example of this. So we start with a box, okay? And then you're going to go into the modifier list, and you're going to add an edit mesh modifier, okay? So you have a box, and you're going to edit the mesh. Okay, has everybody got that? Okay. Edit mesh, this is where this gets really different than Rhino. This is something that you probably like wished for, as a matter of fact. Remember, like, you can get access to the topological information of an object in Rhino. I can look at the points, or I can look at the facets of the surface or the curves. But if I move those, the object doesn't like update, right? You just essentially like remove it from the object, or you break the object, or like whatever. It doesn't do what you want it to do. It just push the thing and like twist it and mess with it, okay? If I go into edit mesh, these are the different topological levels, okay? We have vertex, so see the vertexes all light up. We have the edges. We have faces, and there are 2 faces to every polygon, right? That's how we get a square, having 2 triangles, because 3 points makes a plane, and a plane is a face, okay? We go up to polygons, and then we have the actual kind of square kind of piece. And then the element, which is the whole mesh itself, okay? Make sense? So let's just start off by going to vertex, and let me look at this thing in front view, and check this out. I can make a selection, and I can pull that form, and there you go. Like I've already like transformed that like mesh now. So I can transform the object at any topological level that I want. So that's the like vertex, right? I could go in and I can hold down Control to select multiple points, right? And I can push this like face in even further if I want to. Let's go ahead and add a smooth modifier. And that's going to give us back the facets. The program is, okay, so video games, this might get kind of like pedantic here, but video games, it's very important to keep down the number of polygons, because the more polygons, the more the computer has to crunch, the slower the game gets. The game gets slow, nobody buys it, right? So there's like dedicated artists who try to optimize, have the fewest number of polygons for the most good-looking form that you have, right? So if I've got like a soldier in like Halo, and I can shave, 40 polygons off of his face, like, then I earn my paycheck, okay? If I can make that jaw still look right by like removing information, that's good. What they do though is that they add a kind of smoothing algorithm that says, even though there's like very few faces, let's render it as though it might be smooth. So if you look at it without the smooth modifier, you don't get the kind of jagged, you don't even almost realize it's a mesh, right? Look at that. See how it kind of makes it like smooth, like it kind of takes like makeup and applies it to it. It just kind of airbrushes it, okay? And now if I apply that, that's actually the geometry. That's actually the facets, right? When you're playing video games are so good now. The processors are so good. I'll bet you've never really seen something that looked like this. Maybe when you played games like 10, 15 years ago, right? Everything was kind of boxy. The difference between Quake and Halo now, right, is that they're less boxy, less blocky. Part of it's not because there's more polygons, I mean there are, but also because the smoothing algorithms that they use are better and better, okay? So when you want things to look faceted, you actually have to add a smooth modifier, because that disables the smoothing at first, okay? That makes sense. Okay, that was a long explanation, but if you want these cool, like, iron pay, kind of icy, faceted kind of thing, you need to put that on top of there. Then go back in the static modifier mesh, you're fine. So that's pretty cool, all right. Then you've got these. You can kind of, you've seen projects that look like this, I'd wager, right? That are these kind of, faceted, distorted kind of things, right? Okay. So just pushing and pulling points around gives us that. That's pretty cool. Go back to edit mesh again, and you get this warning that comes up when you go back to box now after I've edited the mesh. This is the kind of like kill your grandfather kind of thing, right? If I go back to the and it's like, are you sure you want to continue? And I'll say, okay, yes. Go back to box now. If I play with the number of height segments, that is going to mess up the information in that, because now there are more points than there used to be, and I modified those points before, right? If I go back and try to change that information, that data structure, I mess it up, okay? So be really careful when you're editing a mesh if you go back and modify the box, okay? You might kill its grandfather, and then it doesn't get born yet, right? It's like a time machine. Okay, so fair enough. What else? We can do other stuff with this. Let's go into edit mesh again. I can go into these vertices. I mean, this is great. Like you can stretch stuff. Like I can pull this up. Let's say I want to make, like in Rhino, if I had a beam and it wasn't quite long enough, it's very difficult just to stretch it, right? To stretch it to snap to fit that thing. But in Max, just open up the modifier stack and pull that thing until it stretches to where you want it to be. Okay, it's very easily done. Okay, let's do some other stuff here. You can grab an edge and also do these kinds of transformations. So I can go in and I can grab this edge here. If I can highlight it. Sometimes it's kind of hard to see these. I might need to do like a wireframe view or something. I don't know why it's not letting me do that. Huh. By vertex. Huh. Okay, well, something's not right. Stand by here. Oh, weird. I could do ignore back facing. There's all kinds of settings in here that they default to. Yeah, okay, ignore back facing. Huh. Sorry, hang on. Shaded. It's not letting me choose it. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna throw another one on. It's maybe that'll reset it. Huh. I'm not able to choose my faces here. Okay, hang on. I think I did something to it, or to my system. I don't know. All the stuff I was showing you doesn't work now. Okay.
Is it because you're on your move instead of select object?
Oh, maybe. Shouldn't be though. Should just be able to select. Yeah, it's a good call though. Hang on a second. I've never seen this before. Huh. Okay. Well, let me do something else. Let me see if edit poly works. I don't know if it's a system bug or just that kind of thing. Let's see if that works. Okay, well anyway. There's edit mesh and edit poly, and for this demonstration I'm just gonna use, it's the same idea, but you can take an edge and you can transform an edge too, so I can actually pull edges, which is pulling two vertices at the same time. You can also rotate that edge, which can give you some interesting effects as well. So any transform can be applied to these kind of sub objects, right? To that geometry. So try if yours works, try rotating an edge or scaling an edge. I'm not exactly sure what I did to my system here. And then if you throw a smooth on there, you get it back. So edge. If you can use the constraints, for that.
Can we insert vertices? Like,
Could you insert vertices?
Yeah.
Yes. You can go in and you can go to. I'll see if this works, Yashka. You go to the vertex level, and you can say like create vertex, and then you can kind of you can make vertices in the object. Ugh, and that's making them in space there, but. Yes, there's ways to modify the geometry. There's some ways that are easier than others. I'm not going to go through that. Mostly I'm concerned with modifying existing geometry. Oh, there we go. I think I accidentally checked by vertex. That's what it is. Okay, that fixed it. So I learned a lesson here. You want to make sure that you don't have by vertex checked. Okay, so is everybody kind of like you guys have practiced a little bit? Okay, so now you can go in and you can go to the like polygon level or the face level, and you can actually go in and you can pull those as well. So I can pull the whole thing at once. I can also scale it, which actually gets kind of cool. So I can scale, make some of them bigger, make some of them smaller, as well as pushing them and rotating them in interesting, kind of ways. Some of them not so interesting, but yeah, there you go, polygon level. Then the polygon one is really interesting, especially when you're dealing with just a base box. So if I go back to my box, go back to edit mesh. Okay, so you guys have played a little bit. Now I'm going to show you another thing that gets really interesting. Go ahead and can you guys get back to a box again? Just go ahead and get rid of that edit mesh modifier. And I'm going to need, I'm going to do this. If you guys have a question too, let me know. But okay, I'm going to do something like this just to give me a lot of boxes here. Hang on a second. Okay. So another thing about box modeling, if you have a box and you're editing the mesh, you can go to polygon level. You can pick facets of that box, and you can extrude them. And extruding actually gives you, so instead of just pulling it, I actually get new geometry. It actually extends that. It gives me more boxes to like mess with. Okay, so if I click on something, I can extrude it. That is crazy, right? And you can extrude at a certain distance by putting something in that type in, and then you pick it. Okay, if that's not very exciting, we can go in and I can take a sphere and I can add an edit mesh to it. And I can do polygon level and grab some polygons off of that. And if I go to local normals, I can extrude those out, and now I can make like a like a mine or something. Okay, crazy. Or if you went in and you modified some of this, made these forms more kind of funky. If you extrude those polygons to their local, you can begin to change the direction of them, right? Because if you change the angle of it and you use the local coordinates of that angle, any extrusion you make now takes on that additional angle.
How are you extruding that? I can't get mine to.
Go to polygon level, click on a polygon, click on extrude, and then click and hold, and then you'll extrude it. Yeah. Okay. So play with that like a little bit. Like that may not seem like very much, but I assure you it's really powerful. You can also go in, if I've got this other object here, check this out. I go to those polygons like on the edges here, and I scale them locally, and now I can make little spikes coming out of it.
I think bevel does that too.
Yeah, if you use a bevel, it actually combines the two. It's a combination of extrude with a scale kind of taper. And The assignment that I'm going to give you guys, these things out of Sightless, it's very difficult. I would never ask you guys to like design something. I'm going to give you these forms. You're going to be able to hopefully look at these forms and think about the commands I'm talking about today, like, for instance, box modeling and extruding, and kind of understand, like, okay, I can get close to that form with a technique like that. And just get as close as you can to the images that are in Sightless. Okay? Does anybody have any questions about like what they're doing with this piece here? So they're just, to modify at that topological level in an interactive way can be really useful.
What was the difference between group and local? What did that do?
Group, okay, that's a good question, Nick. Let's go back and I'll just make a copy of this sphere and I'll show you the difference here. Oops, I don't want to do instance. Here. So we go back, I'll go back to, and I'll add the edit mesh here. Group basically, Nick, will give all of them the same extrusion. Local gives each one its own individual extrusion path. So like if I go in, and it probably won't do, so if I change it to group, now that one's not doing it the way I think it does. There should be, it's basically like the kind of local normal of that object. It's not doing what I think it's supposed to do. That, you know what, I might need to look that one up, but there should be, hang on a minute, let's see if this does anything, because now they're all, well, I don't know. Yeah, they seem to be doing the same thing here. I thought actually, I thought they were all going to move up in the z-axis. That doesn't seem to be the case, though. I don't know. Something to look up.
If we just click one, will it select all of them now? If we were just click one face in this group?
No.
Okay.
No, it wouldn't. But that's a really good question. So the question that Ryan asked was, like how do you keep tabs on the same selection? Okay, good question. You can actually do that. If you go back, I'm going to delete edit mesh here. I'm going to add a mesh select modifier, and then I'm going to choose some modifiers here. Or choose some faces, I guess, polygons. Then if I go into edit mesh and I go to polygon, they're already selected. Okay. And so then I can apply a transformation. And then if I ever want to go back and delete this, I've always got those like selected. I can always get access to them. You can also make a selection group when you're in edit mesh, as a matter of fact. If I go to that polygon level, I think you can say, I think you can make like a smoothing group, it's called, and that'll actually save those in a batch. But that's kind of advanced.
Does that kind of like layers and sublayers in Rhino?
Kind of, yeah. But it's in the object itself. That's the weird part. Okay. So that is kind of box modeling. And why is box modeling, interesting? I mean, okay, we like these kind of facety things. We like to kind of think about like a process like Eisenman, where it's like, I'm going to do this operation, and then I'm going to apply that same operation to something again. And it's like it's a process and accumulation of transformations on an object that gets us to the final form. It's a very procedural, like very architectural thing. The other thing that's cool about box modeling is, I know you guys have seen these weird kind of like blobby forms, these like Cecil Bauman kind of things. You're like, God, how do they model that in Rhino? Like, that's really crazy. Well, you can model it in Rhino. But another thing you can do is you take an object that's been edited, like a mesh edit object, and you can apply a Meshsmooth. And if you throw some iterations on it, check that out. Now again, in our time machine, we have, this is the mesh form, but the smoothed iteration is what you see like here, okay? And actually, ladies and gentlemen, if you take any box and you apply that Meshsmooth to it, you get that kind of smoothed form. So there you go. Like, you get a rounded corner, Steve Jobs, box, right? And if you add, you really only want to add maybe 1 or 2 like iterations. The more iterations you add to it, the slower it gets, because this again is actually made up of polygons. Like check this out. If I go and I add an edit mesh modifier to this, that's actually what the polygons look like. That's a lot. It needs, remember, more polygons to smoother the object. Okay. Let's take a look at this. I mean, I think you guys probably understand. Did you crash yours? It's real easy. If you add too many iterations to crash your computer, it gets very complicated. Check out the density of that, though. And so, like, I can't necessarily model like that, but I can sure go back to the edit mesh part and see I have access. If I turn this on, I can see the end result. I can go through and I can totally model that interactively if I want to. And yes, you can export this to another program, cut holes in it, cut doors in it, put a sign up, build it, you know, right? Like, you can fab this.
Does that export as a mesh?
You can, it exports as a mesh. You can export it as IGES curves into Rhino. Yeah. It's not so great, though. The mesh is the best way to keep it. So this is actually how they create, like, you know, Pixar, you know, characters and stuff like that. Like, a lot of the stuff is actually kind of modeled by boxes first, and then it kind of gets smoothed over, because it's much easier to manipulate a couple of points on a box than 30 points that make a nose, right? I see Christian's got a great, he's got a really good idea there on his screen. So you can take a box, and let's just flip these around here. Take a box that's been edited, and I can, if I extrude, and you can actually, I think you can even pucker this thing. You can move it in. Pretty cool. You can take a plane. Well, actually, I won't do that. You can take something though, and you can essentially make kind of like topo, right? I can pull some of these things up from each other. If I extrude them, I get more. I get branches of this thing, like little. Wow. Kind of like a gear shift column or something. Cool. Okay. So if you think about the structure of what you're making, like, as the box, then you get a sense of what the rounded form is going to be. The more detail that you have in your initial form. Let's go ahead and I'll take this off here. So let's say I'm gonna add way more polygons to this. Okay, and then if I go into my edit mesh again, and this is gonna hurt. Let's see here.
You got a hotkey for select?
I thought it was S, but no, that's snap. I don't know. We can look it up. Yeah, I actually don't know. I usually just click somewhere and say select. Hang on one second here. Whoa. Okay, so more information. Sorry, this is taking me a little while here, but if I've got more information and I perform a transformation on a box, and again, this is not a Meshsmooth box. Actually, it already has kind of it's already smooth, but it should. Where's my Meshsmooth? Yeah, it should lead to a more subtle variation in that form than the more severe kind of puckering that I had before. So if you want a very smooth like transition, you just increase the density of the initial mesh, and then you make a transformation, and the Meshsmooth will be like a nice crisp like transition. Okay. But you want to be really careful. Again, like I said, the more iterations of the Meshsmooth you have, like it's going to begin to slow down your computer. It does make it a lot nicer looking though. Yeah, see when I get up to, so the transition's like very nice though. And again, you know, I could model this in Rhino, and I could go in and I would plot every single line and every single offset and like whatever. But if I'm just going for a schematic idea about my building, like this is very fast, right? You can always go back in Rhino and trace it later, get your curves that you want, get the precision that you want. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about this stuff?
If we worked on a schematic design, is there any way to import a Google image
Oh, totally.
to it?
Yeah, man. Yeah, you can put in image underlays in here. You can import a Rhino model if you want to twist a Rhino model. Like, let's say you don't. I mean, I think there's actually a command in Rhino that does that.
Yeah.
But let's say you like the interface. You can import your Rhino model and do stuff to it here too.
Okay.
Yeah, these programs are interoperable. I mean, that's really if I want to say anything today, it's that don't get stuck in any one like tool or anything, right? Okay. I'll do another thing here. So that was box modeling and Meshsmooth. Too many segments here. Okay. So I've got a box. We go into modify, and I'm going to throw on an FFD, and I think I'm going to do a 3x3x3. I'll show you what that is. FFD stands for freeform deformation, which is that I put like essentially a force field around the object, any object that I have. I should probably pick something other than a square, as a matter of fact. Let me do a cylinder. Let's make this interesting. You could do it with a teapot. You could do it with like a bust of Shakespeare. Freeform deformation. Well, it deforms any form basically. It's freeform. Okay.
Is it like cage edit?
What's that?
Is it like cage edit right now?
Cage edit. Yeah. Only it's interactive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, I got my cylinder. I'm gonna throw on my FFD. Yeah, I mean, again, it's not like it's not like Rhino or Max or anything invented like everything. I go into the control points layer, and I can pull things. And you notice, okay, so when we like mesh edited the object, if you pull a point, you like pull it, right? It's like a sharp, kind of thing. You move it from one location to another, and it can get really spiky. Okay. But if I have a freeform deformation box, the transition is like smooth, okay? Like it's actually going to allow me to kind of bend. It's almost like the kind of bend modifier, but it gives you this really nice like soft transformation that you don't get with these other methods, right? So I can sort of shape this thing in a way that's really difficult to do with just mesh edit. It's like a mega mesh edit. Okay, it's actually editing all the points within the effect area of those control points. So I can kind of like bend it a little bit. Like I can kind of pull this thing over, pull it left and right. And like always, if I go back in my cylinder and I increase the number of segments in something, I can get a smoother geometry. And if I make it smooth enough, I mean, I really can really get something there. It's really sharp. Let's turn off edge faces. So it's like a bone. It becomes really more of like an organic form. Okay. And so how would you actually, in a project, let's think about this. Like you could think about a force acting on a building. You guys talk about this, I know, like all the time. Like something is like bulging or something's pushing into it or it's being affected by something like that. You can literally have that apply itself to the FFD or to the extrusion of the polygons in one of these modes. Okay. And if you want that cap to be a little bit more rounded, I mean, I think you can throw a mesh at. You can throw a Meshsmooth on this even, and you might need to apply a different style of output. Yeah, but anyway, you can kind of round up that edge if you get the right settings for your mesh edit or for your Meshsmooth. So it's even more like a bone. Okay. Okay. Let's take a break. I think you guys are blown away. So let's take 10 minutes. We'll come back at 1:45. Okay? If anybody has any questions, feel free to stick around. I'll answer them.